The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Tom, my neighbor at the lake, we'd known each other 30 years. Him and his late wife Linda, me and John. Our cabins sat 2 doors apart on the water. "Margaret," he said. His voice had an edge I didn't recognize. "Are you selling the cabin?" I was at my kitchen table paying bills. The question made no sense. "What? No. Why would you think that?" "There are people here, moving furniture in, a young couple. They said they just bought the place." My pen stopped mid-signature. "That's impossible." "I know, that's why I'm calling. I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe you decided to sell and forgot to mention it." I stood up. My legs felt strange. "Tom, I haven't sold anything. I'll be there in 40 minutes. I grabbed my keys, the cabin keys. I kept them in a small ceramic dish by the front door, right next to my car keys. I'd carried those cabin keys for 40 years, since the day John's father passed the property to us. The metal was worn smooth from decades in my pocket, in my purse, in that dish. The drive to the lake usually calmed me. 72 years old, and I still felt like a kid when I turned onto Lake Road, saw the pine trees get thicker, smelled that mix of water and wood. Today, nothing felt calm. I pulled into the gravel driveway. There was a U-Haul truck parked where I usually parked. A young couple, maybe early 30s, was carrying a sofa toward the front door. My front door. The door I'd painted blue 3 summers ago with John before he got sick. I got out of my car. The cabin keys were in my right hand. I could feel every groove in them. "Excuse me," I said. They both turned. The woman smiled. Friendly. "Hi there. Can we help you?" "This is my cabin." The words felt strange coming out, like I was trying to convince myself as much as them. The man's smile faded. He set down his end of the sofa. "I'm sorry. What?" "This property. It's mine. Has been for 43 years. Before that, it was my late husband's family, since 1952. The woman looked at her husband. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, showed it to me. "We just closed on this place 3 weeks ago. We have all the paperwork. The deed, the title transfer, everything." 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I was in hospice care. Dying, or so they'd told me. "Can I see the documents?" My voice was steady. I'm a retired teacher, 3rd grade. I'd spent 40 years staying calm while small children melted down around me. I could handle this. He walked to the truck, came back with a folder. I opened it. Sale price $340,000. Date of closing, June 17th, 2024. Seller's signature. My name, Margaret Hayes. In handwriting that looked almost like mine. Almost. But I'd never signed this. I'd never even seen this document before. "Who did you buy this from?" I asked. I already knew. Somehow, I already knew. The man checked his phone again. The listing agent was Sarah Mitchell. She represented the seller. He paused. "Margaret Hayes. Is that you?" "Sarah Mitchell is my daughter," I said quietly. The couple looked at each other. The woman's expression shifted from friendly to uncomfortable. "We didn't know. She said it was her mother's property, that her mother wanted to downsize, that everything was handled through power of attorney because of health issues." I stood there on the gravel driveway, the cabin behind them, the lake beyond that. I could hear water lapping against the dock, could smell the pine trees, could feel the keys in my hand, keys that didn't unlock anything anymore. 3 generations of my family had spent summers here. John's grandfather bought this place for $8,000 in 1952, a fortune for a factory worker back then. John's father passed it to us. We'd raised our kids here. Sarah learned to swim off that dock. Mark caught his first fish from that boat, and now strangers owned it, because my daughter sold it while I was dying. Except I wasn't dying. The diagnosis was wrong. Pancreatitis, not pancreatic cancer. Treatable. I was home now, recovering, standing in my own driveway, locked out of my own cabin. "I'm so sorry," I said to the couple. "This isn't your fault. You bought the property legally, I can see that. but I never signed anything. I couldn't have. I was in hospice care 3 weeks ago. I was unconscious most of the time. The husband's face went pale. You're saying this wasn't authorized? I'm saying I need to talk to my daughter, and probably a lawyer. I turned and walked back to my car. I put the useless keys in my purse. I didn't look back at the cabin. If I looked back, I might start crying, and I wasn't ready to cry yet. I called Sarah from the car. It went to voicemail. Sarah, it's Mom. Call me, now. Then I sat there in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the lake through the trees. My daughter sold our family's cabin while I was in hospice care, while I thought I was dying. I didn't sign anything. I couldn't have. I was unconscious, on morphine, barely aware of where I was. So how did my signature end up on those documents? I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about those documents. My signature. My daughter's name as the listing agent. $340,000 for a property worth at least $480,000. I know because I'd had it appraised 2 years ago when I updated my will. The next morning, I made coffee at 6 a.m. Same routine I'd had for 40 years. Earl Grey tea in John's old blue mug. Toast with butter. I sat at my kitchen table and tried to make sense of what happened. I should probably explain how we got here. I'm Margaret Hayes, 72 years old. I taught 3rd grade for 40 years at Riverside Elementary. Retired 7 years ago. My husband John died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. The way everyone says they'd want to go, but nobody actually wants. We were married 43 years. The cabin was John's family property. His grandfather, Robert Hayes, bought it in 1952 for $8,000. Robert was a factory worker in Detroit, saved for years to buy that little piece of lakefront. Passed it to John's father, who passed it to John, who passed it to me when he died. I'd planned to pass it to our kids, Sarah and Mark. Sarah's 45 now, my older child. Mark's 48, lives in Oregon, works as an engineer. Stable, quiet, pays his own way. Always has. Sarah's had a harder time. 2 years ago, her husband Dan's construction business collapsed. Not his fault, really. Dan had partnered with another contractor on a major project. Commercial building, city contract. The partner disappeared with $200,000 in deposits. Just vanished. Dan tried to make the business work, but the debt was crushing. They were hemorrhaging money. That's when Sarah started asking for help. $15,000 for the business. I liquidated a CD I'd been saving for a new roof. $8,000 for Emma's private school tuition. I took it from my savings account. $12,000 when their car broke down. I cashed out another CD. $6,000 for credit card debt they'd racked up trying to keep afloat, what was left of my emergency fund. Then another $11,000 when Dan's business finally shut down completely, the last of my liquid savings. $52,000 total over 2 years. I thought I was helping my daughter save her family. I thought that's what mothers do. I watched my confident, capable daughter, the one who'd been president of her high school class, who'd built a career in marketing, become someone I barely recognized. Anxious, desperate, checking her phone constantly for bank balance alerts. She sent out hundreds of resumes, 18 months of applications, marketing director positions, manager roles, coordinator jobs, nothing. She's 45 in an industry that wants 25-year-olds with social media expertise she doesn't have. I watched her get rejected over and over, watched her confidence crumble. 6 months ago, she told me she'd started therapy. For anxiety and depression, she said. The financial stress was overwhelming. I thought that was a good sign. I thought she was trying to get help. I didn't know desperation could override treatment, could make someone capable of what she did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Last year, I got sick. Stomach pain, weight loss, jaundice. My doctor sent me for tests. The results came back. Mass on my pancreas. Pancreatic cancer, they said. Stage 3. Maybe 6 months, probably less. Sarah insisted I sign a medical power of attorney. Just in case, she said, so someone can make healthcare decisions if you can't. It made sense. I was sick. I might need someone to talk to doctors, make choices if I was unconscious. I should have read it more carefully. I should have taken it to a lawyer. But she's my daughter. I trusted her. That was April. By May, I was in hospice care. The pain was unbearable. They had me on morphine around the clock. I don't remember much from those weeks. Fog and pain and nurses checking vitals. Sarah visited twice, once at the beginning, once near the end. Mark tried to fly out from Oregon, but Sarah told the hospice staff not to contact him. She said it would upset him unnecessarily, that there was no point making him watch me die. Then in early June, something changed. A new doctor reviewed my case, ordered different tests. Turned out the original diagnosis was wrong. Not pancreatic cancer, pancreatitis. Severe, but treatable. Manageable with diet and medication. I wasn't dying after all. They released me from hospice on June 20th, 3 days after Sarah sold the cabin. I came home to my empty house. Sarah didn't visit, didn't call. Mark flew out the following week. He was furious when he found out Sarah had told the hospice not to contact him. We had a quiet week together. He helped me set up medications, made sure I could manage on my own, then flew back to Oregon. Sarah called once in July, asked how I was feeling, mentioned she'd been stressed, that things were hard. She didn't say anything about the cabin. I didn't know. Not until Tom called. I got up from my kitchen table, walked to the living room, pulled out the photo albums. I do this sometimes when I'm trying to think. The cabin albums are separate. 4 thick books organized by decade. I opened the oldest one, 1950s, 60s, black and white photos of John's grandparents on the dock, John's father as a boy, fishing. Then color photos start, 70s, 80s, John and me, newly married, painting the cabin, building the deck, then Sarah as a baby, Mark as a toddler, birthday parties on the lawn, swimming lessons off the dock, 4th of July sparklers, Christmas visits when the lake froze. Last summer, Sarah's daughter Emma, 11 years old, fishing off that same dock, laughing, her whole life ahead of her. That cabin wasn't just property, it was memory. 3 generations of memories, and Sarah sold it for less than it was worth while I was unconscious. Last summer, Sarah had stood on the cabin deck looking out at the water. "This place is worth a fortune, Mom. $500,000 easily. Such a waste just sitting here." I'd laughed it off. "It's not sitting here, honey. It's waiting for us, for Emma." She hadn't laughed back. I should have paid attention to that silence. That night, after looking at the photo albums until I couldn't anymore, I went to my file cabinet, found the medical power of attorney I'd signed in April, read it 3 times. Healthcare decisions only. It said nothing about property, nothing about financial decisions, nothing about selling real estate on my behalf. I sat there at 2 in the morning, holding that document, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Sarah didn't have legal authority to sell the cabin, which meant she'd forged my signature. My own daughter forged my signature while I was dying, or while she thought I was dying. I needed help. I needed someone who knew about these things. Tom had mentioned his daughter was a lawyer, something about elder law. I'd call him in the morning. But first, I needed to know more. How had Sarah done this? How had she gotten away with it? And why, really why, had she sold our family's cabin for $140,000 less than it was worth? The next morning, I called the county recorder's office. I needed to understand what had actually happened, how the sale was processed, what documents were filed. The clerk was helpful, professional. She pulled up the record while I waited on hold. The property at 42 Lake Road was sold on June 17th, 2024, she said. Sale price $340,000. Buyer was Michael and Jennifer Patterson. Seller of record, Margaret Hayes. What about the deed transfer? Can you tell me when that was signed? Papers rustled. The deed shows a signature date of June 15th, notarized the same day. June 15th. I pulled up my phone calendar. That was a Thursday. I'd been in hospice for 3 weeks by then. The morphine was constant. I couldn't have signed my own name, let alone a legal document. "Thank you," I said. "Can I get copies of those documents?" "They're public record." I can email you the file. By noon, I had everything. The deed transfer, the title paperwork, the sales contract, all of it with my forged signature. I sat at my kitchen table, documents spread out, and did what I should have done immediately. I went online, looked up recent cabin sales on the lake, similar properties, similar size, similar condition, $460,000, $485,000, $515,000 for one with a newer dock. Sarah had sold our cabin for $340,000, at least $140,000 under market value. Why would she price it so low, unless she needed it to sell fast? I thought about the file cabinet in my den. The cabin's original paperwork was in there somewhere. The deed from 1952, when John's grandfather bought it. I wanted to see it. Wanted to hold something real and true, while everything else felt like it was dissolving. I went to the den, opened the bottom drawer. Manila folders organized by year. I found the cabin folder, started pulling out documents. That's when I saw it. Misfiled. Shoved in the back of the cabin folder, probably by accident when I was organizing papers last year. An envelope, addressed to Sarah and Dan Mitchell, from First National Bank, Mortgage Services Department. I opened it. Notice of foreclosure. Their house. The house where Sarah had lived for 15 years, where Emma was growing up, was being foreclosed. The letter was dated February 10th, 4 months before Sarah sold the cabin. Sarah and Dan were losing their home. They were 3 months behind on payments. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. Total amount owed $182,000. I sat there on the floor of my den, holding that letter. Sarah had never mentioned this, never said the house was in foreclosure, just kept asking for money, kept saying things were tight and stressful. She was drowning, and she'd pulled me under with her. My phone rang. Sarah, finally returning my call from yesterday. I almost didn't answer, but I needed to hear her voice, needed to understand. Hi, Mom. Sorry I missed your call yesterday. Things have been crazy. We need to talk, I said. Can you meet me today? Is everything okay? No, Sarah. Everything is not okay. Silence. Then, okay. Where? The coffee shop on Main Street, 1 hour. I called Tom, told him what I'd found. He came over immediately, helped me organize the documents, take photos of everything with my phone, just in case. You need a lawyer, Margaret, he said. This is fraud, forgery, elder abuse. I know, but I need to talk to her first. I need to hear what she has to say. We were still at the kitchen table, papers everywhere, when my phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. On my way, see you in 10. She's coming early, I said. Tom and I scrambled, shoved documents into folders into my tote bag. We just cleared the table when I heard a car in the driveway. Out the back, I whispered. Tom grabbed his jacket, slipped through the kitchen door to the backyard. He'd circle around, get to his car without Sarah seeing him. Sarah knocked, came in without waiting. Mom, you here? Kitchen, I called. My heart was pounding. She walked in, looked around. Were you expecting someone? I thought I saw a car pulling away. Just a neighbor dropping something off. Sit down. We sat across from each other at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd reviewed those documents 5 minutes ago. I could still see the outline where papers had been stacked. Tom called me yesterday, I said. He said there are people at the cabin, that it was sold. Sarah's face went pale, then red, then carefully neutral. Mom, I was going to tell you. When? When you were stronger. You just got out of hospice. I didn't want to stress you out. The cabin was sold 3 weeks ago, Sarah, while I was in hospice. How did that happen? She looked down at her hands. You gave me permission. I what? You had a lucid moment. June 13th, I think. You were awake, clear. We talked about it. You said to handle it. Said the medical bills were going to be catastrophic and we needed to protect your assets. I stared at her. June 13th. I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar notes. I'd been tracking the hospice days when I got home, trying to piece together the fog. I don't remember that, I said slowly. You were on a lot of medication. It's normal to not remember. Sarah, my insurance covered everything. There were no catastrophic medical bills. Her eyes flickered. Well, I thought there would be. The doctors said, "You sold my cabin without asking me, for $340,000, when it's worth almost $500,000. I got what I could get. The market was slow. I had to price it to sell. Why did you need it to sell fast? Silence. Sarah, why did you need the cabin to sell quickly? We needed the money, she said finally, quietly. Dan's business failed. We were behind on everything. The bank was... She stopped. The bank was foreclosing on your house, I said. I found the letter. Her face crumbled, started crying. Not theatrical, just quiet, desperate tears. I didn't know what else to do. We were losing everything. You were dying. I thought you wouldn't need it anymore. I thought I was helping, protecting your assets from medical bills and setting aside money for your care and using what was left to save our house. I felt something hard settle in my chest. You thought I'd be dead and it wouldn't matter. Mom, please, I was desperate. I panicked. I made a terrible decision, but I was trying to save our family. By stealing from your dying mother? It wasn't stealing. It was, you're my mother. What's yours would have been mine and Mark's eventually anyway. Eventually, after I was actually dead. After we'd talked about it. After it was my choice. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I know I should have waited, but we didn't have time. The foreclosure was happening. Emma was going to lose her home. You thought it was easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, except you didn't even plan to ask for forgiveness, did you? You were just going to wait and see if I noticed. She didn't answer. I stood up. I need you to leave. Mom, leave, Sarah. I need to think. She stood, walked to the door, turned back. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, from anger, from betrayal, from the realization that my daughter had forged my signature while I was unconscious. She'd said I gave verbal permission, created a story about a lucid moment that never happened, used my foggy memory against me. And part of me, a small, terrible part, wanted to believe her. Wanted to think maybe I did say something. Maybe I was confused. Maybe I gave some kind of approval and just didn't remember. But I knew the truth. I'd been on morphine. Non-responsive. The nurse's notes would prove it, if I wanted to prove it. I called Tom. I need that lawyer. Your daughter. What's her name? Susan Chen. I'll text you her number. Thank you. I sat there as the afternoon light faded, thinking about Sarah as a little girl, learning to swim off the cabin dock, John holding her in the water, teaching her to float. I've got you, sweetie. I won't let go. When had that changed? When had desperation turned my daughter into someone who could forge her dying mother's signature? And what was I going to do about it? I called Susan Chen first thing Monday morning, Tom's daughter, elder law attorney with 20 years of experience. Her office was downtown, third floor of an old brick building, bookshelves lined with legal volumes, a desk with organized files, and on one wall, what she called her wall of justice, framed thank you notes from elderly clients. Tell me what happened, she said. I did. Everything. The hospice stay, the misdiagnosis, Sarah's financial troubles, the cabin sale, the forged signature. I showed her the documents I'd collected, the deed transfer, the foreclosure notice, the medical power of attorney. Susan listened, made notes, asked precise questions. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. This is textbook financial exploitation of an elderly person, she said, combined with forgery, fraud, and elder abuse. We can build a case, but I need to gather evidence, real evidence that will hold up in court. What do you need? First, your medical records from the hospice. I need to prove you were incapacitated on the date you allegedly signed those documents. That's our foundation. She made phone calls while I waited. The hospice was cooperative. With my signed release, they agreed to send records within 48 hours. 2 days later, Susan called me. "Can you come to my office? I got the records." I drove downtown. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. Susan's office. The manila envelope on her desk. She opened it, pulled out the medical records, spread them across the desk between us. "Here." She slid one document toward me. "This is from June 15th, 2024, the date on the deed transfer signature." I picked it up. The paper was thick. Official. Date stamped in the corner. 6/15/24. Medication log. Morphine sulfate, 4 milligrams intravenous push. 2 p.m., 4 milligrams. IV push. 6 p.m., 4 milligrams. IV push. 10 p.m., continuous pain management protocol. Physician's notes. Dr. Patel. Patient non-responsive to verbal stimuli. Pain management in effect. Comfort care measures continued. Family notified of status decline. I sat there staring at that clinical language. Non-responsive. I remembered nothing from that day. Just fog, pain, the certainty I was dying. "She couldn't have gotten you to sign anything that day," Susan said quietly. "You were incapacitated, unconscious for most of the day. This proves it." I set the document down. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, from the cold, hard certainty of what Sarah had done. She'd forged my signature while I was unconscious, while I was on morphine, while doctors were preparing me for death, while I couldn't fight back, couldn't even speak. I sat there in Susan's office, looking at black and white proof, medical documentation, official records. My own daughter did this while I thought I was dying. "This is your smoking gun, Margaret," Susan said, "but we need more." She was right. We needed to build a complete case. One piece of evidence wasn't enough. Over the next 3 weeks, Susan worked systematically. She hired a forensic handwriting expert to analyze the signature on the deed. The expert compared it to my known signatures, checks I'd written, legal documents from the past 20 years, my driver's license signature. The analysis came back definitive. The signature on the cabin deed exhibited tremor patterns inconsistent with my baseline writing. The pressure points were wrong. The letter formations were slightly off. The expert's conclusion, highly likely forgery or signature made under severe duress or incapacitation. Then Susan's team subpoenaed Sarah's phone records through the discovery process. Legal channels, everything by the book. The records came through. There it was. June 10th. 2024, 5 days before the supposed signature. Text message from Sarah to her husband Dan. "Mom won't know. She's not going to make it anyway. We can save the house." I read that text message 3 times. Mom won't know. She's not going to make it. Sarah had planned this 5 days in advance, calculated when I'd be too far gone to notice, waited for me to die, except I didn't die. Susan also pulled bank records. With my authorization, she requested account information from Sarah and Dan's bank. The timeline was stark. June 18th, 2024. Deposit of $340,000 into Sarah Mitchell's personal checking account. Source: cabin sale proceeds. June 20th. Withdrawal of $180,000. Payee: First National Bank, mortgage payment. Note: foreclosure prevention, account brought current. June 21st, multiple transfers totaling $160,000. Payees: various credit card companies, collection agencies, business debt settlements. By June 25th, less than a week after the cabin sale, the entire $340,000 was gone. Every penny used to pay Sarah's debts. My cabin. 3 generations of family memories. Liquidated to save my daughter's house from foreclosure. The property records told another story. Susan pulled the full transaction history from the county. The cabin had been listed on Friday, June 14th, sold on Monday, June 17th, 3 days on the market. No open houses, no showings to speak of. The buyers, Michael and Jennifer Patterson, were friends of Sarah's real estate colleague. Barely an arm's-length transaction. And the price, $340,000 for a property worth $480,000 minimum. Sarah had deliberately underpriced it by nearly 30%. She needed it to sell fast, needed the money immediately to stop the foreclosure. Tom gave his statement to Susan in her office. I was there when she took it down. He told her about the phone call he'd overheard 2 weeks before the sale. Sarah on her cell phone outside the cabin, mid-May. I need to get access to Mom's assets, Tom had heard her say. Yes, the cabin. She won't know. She's barely conscious half the time. Tom had assumed it was estate planning, legal preparation. He'd never imagined Sarah meant to forge my signature and sell the property without my knowledge. If I'd known, he said, looking at me, I would have called you immediately. I'm so sorry, Margaret. You couldn't have known, I told him, and I meant it. Susan also reviewed the medical power of attorney I'd signed in April. She pulled it out, showed me the relevant section. Look at this language, she said. Healthcare decisions only, medical treatment choices, end-of-life care, communication with physicians. It explicitly states, this document does not grant authority over financial matters, property decisions, or estate management. Sarah had exceeded her authority entirely. The POA gave her no legal right to sell my property, which meant she'd acted without authorization, forged my signature, committed fraud. We have everything we need, Susan said. She organized the evidence into a binder. Medical records proving incapacitation, handwriting analysis proving forgery, text messages proving premeditation, bank records proving financial benefit, property records proving underpriced sale, witness testimony proving suspicious behavior, legal documents proving lack of authority, 5 distinct types of evidence, multiple sources, all pointing to the same conclusion. What happens now? I asked. Now we decide how far you want to take this. We can file a civil lawsuit for fraud, financial exploitation, and elder abuse. We can seek restitution, the full value of the cabin, not just what Sarah got for it. We can pursue criminal charges for forgery and fraud, or we can try to settle this privately, though I don't recommend that route. I looked at the binder of evidence. Thought about Sarah as a little girl. Thought about Emma, my granddaughter, caught in the middle of this. Then I thought about those text messages. Mom won't know. She's not going to make it. Sarah had waited for me to die, had planned to get away with it, would have gotten away with it if the diagnosis hadn't been wrong. File the lawsuit, I said. Civil and criminal, all of it. Are you sure? This will be public. This will damage your relationship with Sarah, probably permanently. She damaged the relationship when she forged my signature while I was dying. I'm just making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. To Mark. To Emma when she's older. Susan nodded. I'll start the paperwork. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, Earl Grey in John's mug. The evidence binder was in front of me. I opened it, looked through the documents one more time. Proof. Cold, hard proof of what my daughter had done. But proof was just paper. The real question was what came next. Could I actually take my own daughter to court? Could I sit across from her in front of a judge and lay out her betrayal for strangers to examine? I closed the binder, looked at the photo on my fridge. Emma's drawing of the cabin, crooked letters spelling Grandma's cabin across the top. I was doing this for Emma, so she'd know that actions have consequences. So she'd learn that desperation doesn't excuse betrayal. So she'd understand that family means holding each other accountable, not enabling each other's worst decisions. I picked up my phone, called Mark in Oregon, told him everything, the cabin, the forgery, the evidence, the lawsuit I was about to file. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I support you, Mom. Whatever you need, I'll testify if it helps. Thank you, I said. My voice broke slightly. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I should have checked on you more. I should have. Mark, stop. This wasn't your fault. Sarah told the hospice not to contact you. Did you know that? What? She told them not to call you, said it would upset you unnecessarily, kept you away deliberately. Another long silence. She really did plan all of this. Yes, she did. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen. The lawsuit would be filed tomorrow. Discovery would begin. Depositions would be scheduled. Eventually, we'd end up in court. Sarah would fight this. I knew she would. She'd claim I was confused, that I'd given permission, that she was trying to help. She'd make herself the victim, but I had proof. Dated, documented, irrefutable proof. And I was ready to use it. The lawsuit paperwork would take a few days to prepare. Susan said she'd call when it was ready for my signature. I had time to think. Too much time. I woke up early the next morning, 6 a.m. The house was quiet. I made coffee, Earl Grey tea in John's mug like always, and sat at my kitchen table. The photo albums were still out from the other night. 4 thick books, organized by decade. I'd pulled them out after finding that foreclosure notice, but I hadn't really looked at them, not carefully. This morning, I did. I opened the oldest album, 1950s, black and white photos, edges yellowed with age. John's grandfather Robert at the cabin. Standing on the dock, he'd built himself, holding up a fish, proud smile on his weathered face. That dock was still there, still sturdy. 3 generations had learned to swim from that dock. I turned the pages. John's father as a boy, learning to fish, building a campfire, the cabin smaller then, just 2 rooms and a screened porch. Then the 1970s, color photos now. John and me, newly married, 23 years old, both of us, painting the cabin's shutters blue, building the deck extension, planting pine trees that were now 50 feet tall. 1980s, Sarah as a baby. Chubby cheeks, bright eyes held in John's arms on that same dock. Then Sarah as a toddler playing in the shallow water. Mark born 3 years later, both kids in matching swimsuits. 1992, Sarah was 10. I found the photo I was looking for, Sarah and John on the dock. Her first swimming lesson, John in the water, Sarah sitting on the edge, legs dangling, John's hands reaching up. I remembered that day, every detail. It was July, hot afternoon, sun beating down on the lake. Sarah had been afraid of deep water, wouldn't go past her waist. John had been patient, spent the whole week coaxing her, playing games in the shallow water, building her confidence. That afternoon, he'd finally convinced her to try floating. "I've got you, sweetie," he'd said, his voice calm, steady. "I won't let go. Just lie back. The water will hold you." Sarah had been terrified. "What if I sink?" "You won't sink, I promise. I'm right here." She'd leaned back slowly, John's hands under her back, supporting her. She'd tensed up at first, splashing, grabbing for him. "Relax," John had said. "Trust the water, trust me." And she had. She'd let herself float. John's hands still there but barely touching, supporting without holding. Sarah's face had lit up with joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. She'd laughed, splashed, floated in circles while John kept watch. "I'm doing it, Daddy, I'm floating." "You are, sweetheart, you're doing it." I'd been on the dock, camera in hand, capturing the moment, watching my husband teach our daughter to trust, to let go of fear, to believe that someone would catch her if she fell. That little girl trusted us completely, trusted John, trusted me, knew we'd never let her drown. I closed the photo album, sat there at my kitchen table, looking at nothing. When did that change? When did desperation turn my daughter into someone capable of forging her dying mother's signature? I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned through me over the past few days and left something else behind. Grief, loss. Not just for the cabin, though I grieved that too, but for the daughter I thought I knew. That 10-year-old floating in the lake, trusting her father's hands to catch her. That was my daughter. The woman who'd texted, "Mom won't know, she's not going to make it." I didn't recognize her, but I couldn't save her from her own choices. I couldn't protect her from consequences she'd created, and if I tried, I'd be enabling the very behavior that put us here. I got up, walked to the den, opened the bottom drawer of the file cabinet where I kept the cabin's original paperwork, the deed from 1952. I pulled it out carefully. The paper was fragile, yellowed at the edges, Robert Hayes' signature in faded ink. Purchase price $8,000. Lot description, property boundaries, lake access rights. 3 generations, 72 years. A factory worker's dream that became a family legacy. And Sarah had sold it in 3 days for $140,000 less than it was worth. I sat at John's old desk in the den, the desk where he'd paid bills, where he'd written letters, where he'd organized 40 years of paperwork before he died. I pulled out my phone, took photos of the original deed, front and back, every page, every detail. Then I drove to the print shop on Main Street, made 3 copies of the deed, good quality copies, clear and readable. 1 copy for Susan's case file, 1 for my safe deposit box at the bank, 1 for myself to keep in this desk drawer where I could look at it when I needed to remember. This deed wasn't evidence of loss anymore. It was evidence of legacy, of family, of what I was protecting now. Not the past, that was gone. But the future. Mark's future. Emma's future. The principle of it. When I got home, I went to the front door, the ceramic dish where I kept the cabin keys. Small blue dish, handmade, bought at a craft fair 20 years ago. The keys sat in it like they always had. Worn brass, familiar weight. I picked them up, held them for a moment, felt every groove, every scratch from decades of use. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened the drawer of my nightstand, set the keys inside, closed the drawer. I couldn't use them anymore. They didn't unlock anything. But I wasn't throwing them away either, just putting them somewhere I wouldn't see them every day, somewhere they could rest. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. I went back to my kitchen, made a second cup of tea, sat at the table with my phone, called Susan. File the lawsuit, civil charges for fraud, financial exploitation, elder abuse, and whatever criminal charges apply, forgery, fraud, whatever the DA will take. You're sure? I'm sure. It'll take about 2 weeks to prepare everything, file with the court, serve Sarah with the papers. That's fine. Margaret, this is going to be public. Court records are public. Sarah will fight this. She'll say you're confused, that you gave permission, that she was trying to help you. Let her say what she wants. We have proof. Yes, we do. After I hung up with Susan, I called Mark. Hey, Mom, how are you doing? I'm okay. I wanted to tell you, I asked Susan to file the lawsuit, civil and criminal, everything. Long pause. Good. I know it's going to be messy. I know it's going to tear the family apart. Mom, Sarah tore the family apart. You're just making sure there are consequences. Will you testify if Susan needs you? Absolutely. Whatever you need. Thank you. Mom, I've been thinking. There's a position opening up at a firm in Portland. Engineering work, good pay. I'm thinking of applying. It's only an hour from Beaverton. I could visit more often, help you with things. My throat tightened. You don't have to change your life for me. I'm not changing it for you. I'm changing it for me. I've been in Oregon for 15 years, and I've used the distance as an excuse not to visit, not to check in, not to deal with family stuff. If I'd been around more, maybe I would have noticed what Sarah was doing. Mark, this wasn't your fault. I know, but I'm tired of being absent, so I'm applying for the Portland job. If I get it, I'll move closer. Not for guilt, just because family matters, especially when family fails you. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The morning sun came through the window, warming the room. The photo albums were still open. I looked at them one more time, then closed them, put them back on the shelf. I sat there with those old papers, the deed copies, the evidence binder from Susan, the medical records with their clinical language of my near death, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't save the cabin. That was gone. The new owners, that young couple with their furniture truck, they'd bought it legally. They'd done nothing wrong. Going after them would be pointless and cruel. but I could protect what was left. I could make sure Sarah never had access to my finances again, never had power of attorney, never could claim she was helping or protecting assets while stealing from me. I could protect Mark, protect Emma, make sure Emma grew up knowing that actions have consequences. That desperation doesn't justify theft. That trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. The lawsuit would hurt, would expose our family's dysfunction for strangers to judge, would probably end whatever relationship I had left with Sarah. But it was necessary, not for revenge, for protection, for principle. Because if I let this go, what message would I send? That family can steal from you as long as they're desperate enough? That betrayal is acceptable if you think you're helping? That trust doesn't matter? No. I'd spent 40 years teaching third graders that actions have consequences, that you can't take something that doesn't belong to you, that saying sorry doesn't undo harm. I couldn't teach my own daughter that lesson at 45 years old, but I could make sure she learned it anyway. Susan filed the lawsuit on a Monday. Civil charges, fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, elder abuse. She also referred the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges, forgery, fraud, theft by deception. Sarah was served with papers on a Thursday afternoon. I wasn't there, but Susan told me about it later. Process server at Sarah's door, legal documents handed over, Sarah's face going white as she read the complaint. Sarah called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, please, we need to talk about this. You're making a terrible mistake. I was trying to help you. Please call me back. Please." I deleted the message. The legal process moved slowly. Discovery phase, deposition scheduled, document exchanges. Sarah hired a defense attorney, Gregory Walsh, experienced in civil litigation. He filed a response to the complaint claiming Sarah had acted with my verbal authorization during a lucid moment in hospice care, that she'd been protecting my assets from anticipated medical bills, that the sale was conducted properly through legal channels. Susan wasn't impressed. Standard defense in elder exploitation cases. Claim the victim consented. Problem is, we have medical records proving you couldn't consent that day. Summer turned to fall. Depositions were taken. I gave mine in Susan's office on the record with a court reporter typing every word. I told the truth. The hospice stay, the morphine, the fog of those weeks, finding out about the cabin sale, the forged signature, the evidence we'd gathered. Sarah's deposition was different. Susan got a copy of the transcript. Sarah claimed I'd been lucid on June 13th, that we'd discussed the cabin at length, that I'd verbally authorized the sale. She claimed she'd acted in good faith, believing she was following my wishes. "She's lying," I told Susan. "I know, and we can prove it." The hospice records for June 13th show the same thing as June 15th. Morphine drip, non-responsive status. She's claiming conversations that never happened. The court ordered mediation, mandatory in civil cases like this, an attempt to settle before trial. We met at a mediation office downtown, neutral territory. A mediator, a retired judge, facilitated the discussion. Sarah's attorney made an offer. Sarah would pay me $100,000 over 5 years, $20,000 per year, in exchange for dropping the civil suit. She'd admit no wrongdoing. The criminal referral would remain active, but the civil case would be dismissed. Susan put the offer on speakerphone back at her office afterward. We'd left the mediation to discuss privately. "It's insulting," Susan said flatly. "First, you'd never see that money. Sarah's headed for bankruptcy. The foreclosure was delayed, not prevented. Her house went into foreclosure anyway 2 months after the cabin sale. Second, it validates her theft. She stole $340,000 and she'd pay you. Hey, back $100,000 over 5 years? That's not restitution. That's a payment plan on stolen property." "I'm not taking it," I said. "Good, we go to trial." But 2 weeks later, Sarah tried again. She showed up at my house unannounced. I opened the door, saw her standing there, almost closed it again. "Mom, please, just 5 minutes." I stepped onto the porch. Didn't invite her inside. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I have an idea, a way to make this right." I waited. "I'll buy back the cabin from the Pattersons for you. I'll negotiate with them, get them to sell it back, and you can have it again, everything like it was before." I stared at her. "With what money?" "I'd need a loan. From you, just temporarily. Until we can work out the legal stuff and—" I held up my hand. "You want me to loan you money to buy back my own cabin, the cabin you stole from me, and in exchange, I'd drop the lawsuit? I'm trying to fix this, Mom. By asking me to fund your solution while you face no consequences, I made a mistake. I'm trying to make it right." "No, Sarah. You made a choice, a calculated choice. You waited until I was unconscious, forged my signature, sold my property for under market value, and used the money to pay your debts. That's not a mistake. That's fraud." Her face crumpled. "I was desperate. Being desperate doesn't make it legal, and I'm not loaning you money to fix the problem you created. Goodbye, Sarah." I went back inside, closed the door. She stood on my porch for a few minutes, then left. Mark flew in from Oregon 2 weeks before trial. He wanted to be here, wanted to support me, wanted to understand what was happening. I picked him up at the airport. We hadn't seen each other since July, right after I'd gotten out of hospice. 4 months. He looked tired. "How are you holding up?" he asked in the car. "I'm okay. Tired of waiting. Ready for this to be over." And Sarah. Haven't talked to her since she tried to get me to loan her money to buy back the cabin. She did what? I told him about Sarah's visit, the buyback scheme. Mark's jaw tightened. She's unbelievable. We drove to my house, sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd reviewed evidence months ago, where I'd confronted Sarah, where I'd made the decision to file the lawsuit. "I need to tell you something," Mark said. "I confronted her, Sarah, 2 weeks ago." "You did?" "I flew out early, stayed at a hotel, called her, said we needed to meet, just the two of us." "What happened?" "We met at a coffee shop. I asked her point blank, 'Did you forge Mom's signature? Did you sell the cabin without permission?' What did she say?" "She cried, said you'd given verbal permission, said she was protecting you, said you were making her the villain when she was just trying to help the family." "Do you believe her?" Mark looked at me. "No. I've read the hospice records Susan sent me. I've seen the text messages. I know what she did, but she believes her own story now. She's rewritten it in her head. She genuinely thinks she was helping. That doesn't make it true." "I know. That's what I told her. I said, 'Sarah, you forged Mom's signature while she was dying. You stole her property. You used the money for your own debts. That's not helping. That's theft.' She got angry, defensive. Said I'd always taken your side, that I'd never understood what she was going through, that I had it easy with my stable job and no kids." "What did you say?" "I said my life isn't her justification for stealing from our mother. I told her I'd testify at the trial if Susan needed me. I told her she'd broken our family, and I didn't know if we could ever fix it." "How did she react?" "She left, walked out. I haven't heard from her since." We sat quietly for a moment. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this." "I'm not in the middle, Mom. I'm on your side. There are no sides here. There's right and wrong. Sarah chose wrong." The trial date was set, October 15th, 1 year and 4 months after the cabin was sold, 1 year after I'd first learned what Sarah had done. A week before trial, I received a letter in the mail. Sarah's handwriting on the envelope, no return address. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Inside, a single page, handwritten. "Mom, I know you won't answer my calls. I know you probably won't read this either, but I need to say it anyway. I'm in therapy now, twice a week, working through everything that led me to make the choices I made. My therapist says I need to take accountability, not just say I'm sorry, but actually understand what I did and why it was wrong. I stole from you. I forged your signature while you were in hospice care, thinking you were dying. I sold our family's cabin, 3 generations of memories, to save my house from foreclosure. I prioritized my financial crisis over your trust, your health, your legacy. I told myself I was helping, that the medical bills would be catastrophic, that you'd want me to protect the assets, that you were dying anyway and it wouldn't matter. But those were lies I told myself to justify something I knew was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I see what I did, the weight of it, the betrayal of it. The trial is next week. I know we'll be on opposite sides of a courtroom. I know our relationship may never recover. I know I destroyed something I can't rebuild. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sarah. I read the letter twice, sat with it for a long time. Part of me, a small, aching part, wanted to believe her, wanted to think that therapy was working, that she genuinely understood, that maybe someday we could find our way back to each other. But Susan's words echoed in my mind. Trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. One letter didn't undo forgery, didn't undo theft, didn't give me back the cabin or the 3 generations of memories tied to it. Actions have consequences. That's what I'd taught for 40 years. That's what I still believed. I folded the letter, put it in the file with all the other documents. Then I picked up my phone and texted Susan, ready for trial. The trial was set for October 15th. County Courthouse, 3rd floor, Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Civil case. No jury. Elder abuse cases are typically bench trials, the judge decides. I arrived at 8:30 a.m. Susan met me in the hallway. Mark was there too, dressed in a suit, ready to testify if needed. "How are you feeling?" Susan asked. "Ready," I said, and I meant it. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, the judge's bench elevated at the front, a witness stand to the side, tables for plaintiff and defendant, a few rows of seats for observers. Tom was there, sitting in the back. He gave me a small nod. Sarah arrived at 8:45 with her attorney, Gregory Walsh. She looked thin, tired. We didn't make eye contact. At 9 a.m., Judge Morrison entered. We all stood. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Professional, no-nonsense demeanor. "Please be seated. We're here for Hayes versus Mitchell, civil case number 2024-3856, financial exploitation, fraud, elder abuse. Ms. Chen, you may proceed with your opening statement." Susan stood, walked to the center of the courtroom. No theatrics, just clear, methodical presentation. "Your Honor, the facts of this case are straightforward. In June of 2024, while the plaintiff, Margaret Hayes, was incapacitated in hospice care, her daughter, Sarah Mitchell, forged Mrs. Hayes' signature on property documents and sold the family's lake cabin without authorization. The defendant used the proceeds, $340,000, to prevent foreclosure on her own home and pay personal debts. We will prove through medical records, forensic evidence, financial documentation, and witness testimony that this was deliberate fraud, committed while Mrs. Hayes was unconscious and unable to protect herself. Thank you." Gregory Walsh gave his opening. He claimed Sarah had acted in good faith, following verbal authorization from her mother during a brief, lucid period, protecting assets from anticipated medical bills, conducting the sale properly through legal real estate channels. He painted Sarah as a desperate daughter, trying to help her dying mother. Then the testimony began. Susan called me first. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Susan asked me to describe what happened. I did. Calmly, factually. The misdiagnosis, the hospice stay, the morphine fog, coming home to discover the cabin was sold, finding the forged signature, the foreclosure notice revealing Sarah's motive. I kept my voice steady. This wasn't about emotion, it was about facts. Gregory Walsh cross-examined me. He asked about my relationship with Sarah. Had it always been contentious? No. Had I given her money before? Yes, over $50,000 in the past 2 years. Did I remember conversations from hospice? Very few, mostly fog. Was it possible? I'd discussed the cabin during a lucid moment and simply didn't remember. No, I said clearly. I reviewed the hospice records. On the days Sarah claims we had these conversations, I was on continuous morphine drip, documented as non-responsive. Those conversations never happened. Susan called Dr. Patel next, the hospice physician. He was in his 60s, calm, clinical. Susan asked him about June 15, 2024, the date on the forged signature. Mrs. Hayes was under my care that day, Dr. Patel said. She was on a morphine drip, 4 milligrams intravenously every 4 hours. Her chart indicates she was non-responsive to verbal stimuli for most of the day. Pain management protocol was in full effect. In your medical opinion, could Mrs. Hayes have understood or signed legal documents that day? Absolutely not. She was incapacitated, unconscious for extended periods. Even in brief moments of partial awareness, she would not have had the cognitive capacity to comprehend legal documents, much less sign them with intent. Gregory Walsh tried to poke holes. Doctor, is it possible for hospice patients to have brief, lucid moments? Possible, yes. But those moments are documented. We note when patients become responsive, communicate clearly, show improved awareness. Mrs. Hayes' chart shows no such documentation on June 13th or 15th. Susan called Tom next, my neighbor for 30 years. He wore a sport coat, looked uncomfortable in the formal setting. Tom testified about the phone call he'd overheard in mid-May. Sarah outside the cabin on her cell phone. I need to get access to Mom's assets. Yes, the cabin. She won't know. Did Mrs. Hayes ever mention selling the cabin to you? Susan asked. Never. That cabin was her pride and joy. 3 generations of her family. She'd never sell it. If she was planning to, she'd have told me. We're neighbors. Friends for 30 years. Gregory Walsh's cross-examination was brief. Isn't it possible you misheard? That Ms. Mitchell was discussing legitimate estate planning? I heard what I heard, Tom said. And estate planning doesn't usually involve the phrase, she won't know. The handwriting expert testified next. He'd analyzed the signature on the deed transfer, compared it to my known signatures from 20 years of documents. His conclusion was technical but clear. The signature exhibited tremor patterns inconsistent with my baseline. Pressure points were wrong, likely forgery or signed under severe duress. A bank officer testified about the deposit, $340,000 into Sarah's account on June 18th, withdrawn within a week to pay mortgage and debts. Then Susan did something I hadn't expected. She walked to the evidence table, picked up a folder, removed a single document, placed it on a stand facing the judge. Your Honor, this is the original property deed for the cabin in question, dated August 1952, purchased by Robert Hayes, Mrs. Hayes' late father-in-law, for $8,000, a factory worker who saved for years to buy that property. He passed it to his son, who passed it to John Hayes, Mrs. Hayes' late husband, who passed it to Mrs. Hayes when he died 5 years ago. She let that sit for a moment. 3 generations, 72 years of family history. The defendant severed that legacy while her mother was unconscious, while her mother believed she was dying, for personal financial gain. The courtroom was silent. Even Gregory Walsh didn't object. Then Susan called Sarah to the stand. Sarah walked slowly to the witness stand, sworn in, sat down. She looked small in that chair. Susan approached. No aggression, just questions. Ms. Mitchell, on June 15, 2024, did you sign property documents transferring ownership of your mother's cabin? Yes. Did your mother physically sign those documents herself? Sarah hesitated. No, but she'd given me verbal permission. Please answer the question asked. Did your mother physically sign the documents? No. So you signed her name, without her being present, without her physical consent on that specific date. I had her verbal permission from earlier. Ms. Mitchell, I'm showing you Exhibit D, your mother's medical records from June 13th, the date you claim she gave verbal authorization. Do you see the notation? Non-responsive, morphine drip continuous, no documented periods of lucidity. Sarah's face went pale. Susan continued. Her voice stayed level, surgical. I'm showing you Exhibit F, text messages from your phone, June 10th, to your husband. Quote, Mom won't know. She's not going to make it anyway. We can save the house. End quote. What did you mean by that? Silence. Ms. Mitchell? Sarah's voice cracked. I was panicking. We were going to lose everything. So you took your dying mother's property to prevent that loss. I thought she wouldn't need it anymore. You thought she'd be dead and it wouldn't matter. I'm sorry. Sarah started crying, not theatrical, just quiet, desperate tears. I'm so sorry. I was desperate. The bank was foreclosing. Dan's business had failed. We'd lost everything. I thought Mom was dying anyway. I thought I could save our house and nobody would get hurt because she wouldn't be here to... She stopped, realized what she was saying. To know, Susan finished. She wouldn't be here to know, except she didn't die. The diagnosis was wrong, and she came home to find out you'd stolen her property. I know. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I know what I did. I justified it at the time, told myself it was helping, but I was wrong. I see that now. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand how I... She looked at me. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. The courtroom was quiet. I sat there, looking at my daughter on the witness stand, seeing her breakdown, seeing genuine remorse. But remorse doesn't undo harm. Judge. Morrison leaned forward slightly. Ms. Mitchell, did you have legal authority to sell your mother's property? I had medical power of attorney for healthcare decisions. Did that document grant you authority over financial matters or property transactions? Sarah looked at her attorney. He said nothing. No, she said quietly. It didn't. So you acted without legal authorization. You forged your mother's signature on legal documents. You sold property that belonged to someone else. You used the proceeds for personal debts. Is that accurate? Yes. The judge made notes, looked at the evidence in front of her, the medical records, the text messages, the financial statements, the property documents, the original 1952 deed. I've heard enough, she said. Ms. Chen, Mr. Walsh, closing statements, please. The closing statements were brief. Susan reiterated the evidence. Gregory Walsh argued his client's intentions were good, that she'd acted out of desperation, not malice, that she was already suffering consequences, bankruptcy, divorce, family estrangement. Judge Morrison took 30 minutes to review her notes. Then she spoke. This case involves a betrayal of trust that goes to the heart of family relationships and elder protection laws. The defendant, Sarah Mitchell, while her mother was incapacitated in hospice care, forged her mother's signature and sold family property without authorization. The defendant used the proceeds, $340,000, to pay personal debts, specifically to prevent foreclosure on her own home. The evidence is overwhelming. Medical records prove Mrs. Hayes was incapacitated on the relevant dates. Text messages prove premeditation. Financial records prove personal benefit. The defendant exceeded the authority granted by medical power of attorney, which explicitly excluded financial matters. I find the defendant, Sarah Mitchell, liable for fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, and elder abuse under state law. The court orders restitution, $340,000, the full proceeds of the sale, plus $45,000 in legal fees and court costs to be paid to the plaintiff. Payment schedule, $1,500 per month until paid in full. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. Financial exploitation of the elderly is a serious crime in this state, and this court takes such matters seriously. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat there. It was over. The trial, the testimony, the evidence, the verdict. I'd won, legally, officially. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, sad, but clear. This was right. This was necessary. Sarah sat at the defendant's table, her head in her hands. Gregory Walsh was packing his briefcase, already mentally moving to his next case. Mark touched my shoulder. "You okay, Mom?" "I'm okay." Susan gathered the evidence files. The restitution order is enforceable. Sarah's obligated to pay, though realistically, with her bankruptcy, you probably won't see the full amount. But the judgment stands. It's on record. "I know," I said. "That's enough." We stood to leave. Sarah was still sitting at the defendant's table. She looked up as we passed. Our eyes met. For a moment, I saw that 10-year-old girl in the lake, learning to float, trusting her father's hands to catch her. But that was then. This was now. I looked away, walked out of the courtroom with Mark and Susan. Tom met us in the hallway, gave me a hug. "You did the right thing," he said. When I got home that afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where this had all started, where I'd reviewed documents, confronted Sarah, made the decision to file the lawsuit. I made tea, Earl Grey, John's mug, and I sat there in the quiet of my kitchen, processing what had just happened. Justice. That's what the court had given me. Legal recognition that what Sarah did was wrong. Restitution ordered, consequences imposed. But justice doesn't give you back what you lost, doesn't restore the cabin, doesn't rebuild trust. I thought about that original deed from 1952, Robert Hayes' signature, $8,000, a factory worker's dream that became 3 generations of Summers. Sarah had taken that, and no court order could give it back. But Emma, my granddaughter, would know, would understand, would learn that actions have consequences. That family doesn't mean blind loyalty. That trust is earned, not owed. That was worth something, maybe everything. I picked up my phone, texted Mark, "Thank you for being there today." His response came immediately. "Always, Mom. I love you." I sat there as the afternoon light faded, thinking about what came next. The restitution payment Sarah probably couldn't make, the criminal charges that might follow, the family that was broken, maybe permanently. And I thought about my next steps, updating my estate plan, protecting Mark, setting up a trust for Emma so this could never happen again, moving forward, not back, forward. Because that's all you can do when trust is broken. You protect what remains. You set boundaries. You teach the next generation. And you stand. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. You stand. The verdict was read on a Friday. By Monday morning, Tom was at my door with a casserole. "Tuna noodle," he said. "Linda's recipe. Figured you could use some comfort food after all that." I invited him in. We sat at my kitchen table. The table that had seen so much of this story unfold. He served us both a portion. It was good, warm, familiar. "You did the right thing," Tom said. "I know it wasn't easy, taking your own daughter to court." "It wasn't," I admitted, "but it was necessary." "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself. A lot of people wouldn't have, would have just let it go, tried to keep the peace." "Keeping the peace doesn't work when someone's stolen from you." He nodded. "Linda used to say that family means holding each other accountable, not covering for each other. I think she'd be proud of you too." After he left, I sat with that thought. Linda had been gone 8 years now. Tom still kept her memory alive through her recipes, her sayings, the way he showed up for people. Still had John's old fishing lures in his tackle box. Couldn't part with them, he'd told me once. Good friendships endure. That was worth remembering. Mark called that evening from Oregon. "Hey, Mom, I got the job, the Portland position, engineering firm downtown. I start in 3 weeks." "That's wonderful, Mark. It's the right move, not just for the job, for us. I've been thinking a lot about how I wasn't there when you needed someone, When Sarah was, "Mark, stop, you couldn't have known what she was doing." Maybe not, but I could have visited more, called more, been present more. I used the distance as an excuse, work as an excuse, my own life as an excuse. And meanwhile, you were dealing with all of this alone. I wasn't alone. I had Tom. I had Susan. Still, I'm your son. I should have been there. He paused. I'm moving in December. I'll be an hour away, close enough to visit every few weeks, help with things, be actually present in your life instead of calling twice a month and pretending that's enough. My throat tightened. I'd like that. Me too, Mom. And for what it's worth, watching you handle this, the way you stood up for yourself, gathered evidence, went to court, I'm proud of you. You taught us that actions have consequences. Turns out you meant it. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about guilt. Mark carried guilt for being absent. Tom carried guilt for not realizing what that phone call meant. I carried guilt for trusting Sarah too much, for not seeing the warning signs. But guilt only matters if it changes behavior. Mark was moving closer. Tom had testified. I'd set boundaries. That was growth. That was enough. Susan called 2 days later. The DA's office reviewed the case. They're filing criminal charges: forgery in the first degree, theft by deception, criminal exploitation of an elderly person. Sarah will be arraigned next month. Will she go to prison? Probably not. First offense. She's already facing bankruptcy and restitution. More likely she'll get probation, community service, mandatory restitution payments as part of the criminal sentence. But it'll be on her record, and the message will be clear. Elder abuse has consequences. Good. Margaret, I have to say, I've been doing elder law for 20 years. I've seen a lot of financial exploitation cases. Most of them end with the victim backing down, trying to reconcile, afraid to push for real consequences. You didn't do that. You followed through. You made it clear that family doesn't excuse theft. I'm impressed. Thank you. I'd like to add your case to my wall of justice. Your thank you note once this is all settled, if you're willing. I looked at the calendar. It would take months, maybe years, for the restitution to be paid. If Sarah could even make the payments, the criminal case would drag on. The family damage was probably permanent, but I'd protected what mattered: my independence, my boundaries, the principle of accountability. I'd be honored, I said. After I hung up, I pulled out my checkbook. Susan had taken this case for standard fees, no pro bono despite Tom's suggestion. But she'd gone above and beyond, prepared meticulously, cross-examined surgically, won comprehensively. I wrote her a check as a bonus. Not huge, I wasn't wealthy, but enough to say thank you properly. The restitution payment started in November. $1,500 directly deposited into my account. I didn't expect them to continue long. Sarah was bankrupt, unemployed, facing divorce. Dan had filed in September, citing irreconcilable differences. They were splitting custody of Emma. I wondered how Emma was handling all of this. 11 years old, watching her parents' marriage dissolve, her grandmother and mother in court against each other. What would that do to a child? I wanted to reach out to Emma, but Sarah had made it clear through her attorney that she didn't want me contacting her daughter directly. So I waited. In December, a letter arrived. Different handwriting this time. Not Sarah's, Emma's. I opened it carefully. Dear Grandma, Mom said I could write to you if I wanted to. She said you probably don't want to talk to us anymore because of what happened with the cabin. But I wanted to tell you something. I'm glad you took Mom to court. I know that sounds bad, but Mom was really stressed and doing things that weren't right. She needed someone to stop her, to show her that you can't just take things that don't belong to you. My therapist, I have a therapist now because of the divorce, says that sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who hold you accountable. I think that's what you did. I miss you. I miss the cabin. I miss the way things were. But I understand why you did what you did. I'm drawing you a picture. It's of you and me fishing off the dock from when I was 8. I still remember that day. Love, Emma. I read the letter 3 times. Then I looked at the drawing, colored pencils, 2 stick figures on a dock, fishing rods extended, one figure labeled Grandma, the other Emma, a blue lake, a yellow sun. I put the drawing on my fridge, next to the old photo of the cabin. Then I sat down and wrote back. Dear Emma, thank you for your letter. It means more to me than you know. You're right. Sometimes loving someone means holding them accountable. I hope your mom gets the help she needs. I hope she finds her way back to being the person she used to be. I miss you too. Very much. I can't change what happened with the cabin, but I want you to know that I've set up something for you. A trust fund. It's protected. Your mom can't access it. When you turn 25, it'll be available for college, a house, whatever you need. It's not much, but it's yours. Safe. You can always write to me. Always. No matter what happens with the adults in your life. I love you, Emma. That never changed. Grandma. I mailed it that afternoon. Then I went to my lawyer, a different lawyer, an estate attorney, and made it official. $50,000 in a trust for Emma. Irrevocable. Protected. Mark as trustee. Sarah had no access, no authority, no way to touch it. I'd lost the cabin, but I'd protect Emma's future. That was something. 2 weeks before Christmas, I received another letter, Sarah's handwriting this time. Mom, I heard you wrote to Emma. Thank you for that. She really needed to hear from you. I'm writing to let you know some things. I'm in therapy twice a week now, working through the depression, the anxiety, the desperation that led me to do what I did. I'm on medication. It helps. The criminal charges are moving forward. My attorney says I'll probably get probation and community service. A record. I accept that. I deserve consequences. Dan and I are divorced as of last month. We're sharing custody of Emma. It's hard, but we're managing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. Trying to be honest with myself about what I did. Trying to make sure I never do anything like that again. Trying to be a better mother to Emma than I was a daughter to you. I hope someday. Not now, I understand that. But someday, maybe we can have a relationship again. Even if it's just cards at Christmas. Even if we never get back what we had. I miss you. I miss us. Sarah. I folded the letter. Put it in my desk drawer with all the other documents from this saga. I didn't throw it away. But I didn't respond either. Trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. Susan had said that months ago. It was still true. Sarah could write all the letters she wanted, could go to therapy, could express remorse. But until I saw consistent change over time, months, years maybe, I wasn't ready to let her back in. Maybe someday, not today. That was okay. Boundaries weren't cruelty. They were protection. I made a cup of tea, Earl Grey, John's mug, sat at my kitchen table and thought about the past year, the diagnosis, the hospice stay, the cabin discovery, the evidence gathering, the lawsuit, the trial, the verdict. I'd survived it all. More than survived. I'd stood up for myself, protected my future, held my daughter accountable, secured Emma's trust. I'd lost a cabin, but I'd found my voice. That seemed like a fair trade. 1 year later, I'm sitting on the balcony of my condo in Beaverton, Oregon. 2 bedrooms, 2nd floor, overlooking a courtyard garden. Not a lake view, but it's peaceful. I moved here in March, 8 months after the trial. The house I'd lived in for 40 years. The house where John and I raised our kids, where I'd taught myself to be a widow, was too big. Too many rooms, too many memories, too much space for one person. This condo is smaller, manageable, mine. I chose every piece of furniture, painted the walls myself, set up my kitchen exactly how I wanted it. Mark lives an hour north in Portland, close enough to visit every few weeks. He comes down for Sunday dinners sometimes. We're rebuilding what distance had eroded, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. I'm not living with him. That matters to me. I'm 73 years old. I don't need someone to take care of me. I need to take care of myself. Independence isn't just about money or property. It's about proving to yourself that you can still stand on your own. My health is stable. The pancreatitis is managed with diet and regular checkups. I'm not dying. That misdiagnosis feels like another lifetime, though it's only been 2 years. 2 years since I thought I had 6 months to live. 2 years since Sarah sold the cabin. I see a therapist, Dr. Brennan, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. We talk about betrayal, about trust, about how to process what my daughter did. It helps. Not in a magical healing way, therapy isn't magic, but in a steady, incremental way. I'm learning to separate Sarah the daughter I raised from Sarah the person who forged my signature. Learning that I can grieve both the cabin and the relationship without letting either loss define me. Sarah sends letters every few months, updates about therapy, about Emma, about her community service sentence. She completed 100 hours last month, working at a senior center, ironically, helping elderly people with paperwork, grocery shopping, technology. The judge's idea of poetic justice, I suppose. I don't respond to the letters, not yet, maybe someday. But trust is rebuilt through consistent actions over time, not through words on paper every few months. She's making progress. Her therapist confirms that when I check in, with Sarah's permission, through proper channels. But I'm not ready. The criminal case resolved in February. Probation for 3 years, community service, mandatory restitution as part of the sentence. No prison time. Her attorney argued she had no prior record, was already bankrupt, facing consequences in every aspect of her life. The judge agreed. The restitution payments continue. $1,500 a month. She's kept up with them so far. 11 months and counting? Will she make it to the end? 20 years at this rate? I don't know, probably not. But the effort matters. Emma writes me every few weeks. Real letters, handwritten. She's 12 now. Splitting time between Sarah's apartment and Dan's new place. Handling it better than I expected. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget to be. The trust I set up for her is safe. $50,000 growing with modest interest. Protected. When she turns 25, it'll be there. College tuition, a house down payment, a cushion against whatever life throws at her. Sarah can't touch it. No one can. That's legacy. Not a cabin on a lake, though I still miss it sometimes. Legacy is making sure the next generation has stability, has choices, has a foundation that can't be stolen. I've started doing some advocacy work. Nothing formal. I'm not qualified to be a lawyer or social worker. But Susan connects me with elderly clients who are considering whether to report financial abuse by family members. I talk to them, tell them my story, help them understand that pressing charges doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. Some of them file reports, some don't. But they all thank me for showing them it's possible to stand up for yourself, even when it means standing against family. Last month, I spoke at a senior center about warning signs of financial exploitation, how to protect your assets, why you should never give someone power of attorney without reading every word, how desperation can turn even loving family members into people you don't recognize. 40 people attended. 3 of them came up afterward to tell me they were reviewing their estate plans that week. One woman said I'd probably saved her from making the same mistake I did, trusting too much, protecting too little. That felt good, not redemptive. I don't believe you redeem loss by helping others avoid it, but meaningful, purposeful, a way to turn experience into something useful. I want to tell you something if you're listening, if you're elderly, if you have assets, if you have family members who are struggling financially. Protect yourself. Not because your family is bad, not because you don't trust them, but because desperation changes people, makes them capable of things they'd never do under normal circumstances. Set up trusts. Require multiple signatures on major financial decisions. Review your estate plan with an attorney. A real attorney, not just someone who says they'll help you. Keep important documents in a safe place. Tell a trusted friend where everything is. If someone asks you to sign something while you're sick or medicated or in crisis, wait. Wait until you're clear-headed. Wait until you can read every word. Wait until you can ask questions. And if someone takes from you, if family steals, if they forge, if they exploit, know that you have the right to press charges. You're not cruel for doing it. You're not destroying the family. They destroyed it when they chose theft over honesty. It's hard. God, it's hard. You'll second-guess yourself 1,000 times. You'll wonder if you're overreacting, if maybe they had good intentions, if you should just let it go for the sake of peace. But peace built on lies isn't real peace. It's just silence. And silence protects the wrong people. Stand up. Press charges if you need to. Set boundaries. Protect what's yours, not because you're selfish, but because you earned it. You worked for it. It's yours. And you deserve better than being stolen from by someone who calls you family. I don't know what happens next with Sarah. Maybe we'll reconcile in 5 years, maybe 10, maybe never. I'm at peace with all 3 possibilities. I'm not waiting for her to fix things. I'm not defining my life by what she took. I'm moving forward. I have my independence. I have Mark nearby. I have Emma's letters. I have Tom visiting when he drives up to see his daughter. I have therapy on Tuesdays and advocacy work that feels meaningful and a condo that's mine. I lost a cabin. I lost my daughter, at least for now. I lost the illusion that family means unconditional trust. But I found my voice. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I proved to myself that I can stand up for myself, even when it costs me something I love. I'm 73 years old. I'm not rich. I'm not powerful. I'm just a retired teacher living in a small condo in Oregon. But I'm standing. I'm independent. And nobody takes that from me again. That's enough. That's everything.